video, we will review the functionality of the Studies tab in ARC 3.2. To navigate to the Studies window, click on the Studies tab located near the top of ARC. The visible columns of patient data and study information can be customized by clicking the gear icon near the top right corner of the screen. Any column headers with check marks next to them will be displayed in the Studies list. Any column headers without check marks will not be displayed. Simply click the box next to a column header to add or remove a check mark. You can customize the order of columns by left-clicking on a column header, then dragging and dropping it in the order you want the columns to be displayed. When you are finished customizing, click the X to close the column chooser window. You can also adjust the order of the columns from the study list. Left-click on the column header you want to move and drag and drop it next to the column where you want it to be displayed. Columns can also be sorted in ascending or descending order. Left-click on the column header for ascending, or again for descending, or click again to remove the sorting. You can also access many functionalities by right-clicking on any of the column headers. This will allow you to sort ascending or descending, or clear sorting, which will remove any of the sorting you have applied to a column header. You can group by the column, which I'll explain grouping in further detail later in this tutorial. You could also select columns, which is just going to open the column chooser window like you did earlier when you used the gear icon. You could choose best fit, which resizes the column you right-clicked on to the best fit to display all of the data in that column, or best fit for all columns, which will resize all of the columns to best fit the displayed data, not just the column you right-clicked on. In addition, you can add a filter, and I will explain filtering in greater detail later in this tutorial as well. If you want to search for an EEG record or records by typing in patient information, you can use the search bar located near the top of the Studies list. Type in the information you are searching for, and click the magnifying glass to the right or press Enter on your keyboard. Any information matching your search criteria will be highlighted in yellow in the Studies list. To clear a search, simply click the X located next to the magnifying glass in the search bar. This will return you to the Studies list you were on prior to performing the search for the record or records. The EEG recordings in the Studies list can also be filtered to find specific EEG recordings. You can filter the Studies list by right-clicking on a column header that you want to filter by and selecting Add Filter. Or you can simply click the filter button located to the right-hand side of the search bar. Click the first drop-down to select the column you would like to apply a filter to. Then select any subsequent boxes to fill in the criteria to be used for filtering. You can add additional filters by clicking the plus icon to the right-hand side of the filter you just added, and then selecting the drop-down list to apply the additional filter that you want to be added. You can remove any undesired filters by clicking the X in the row associated with the filter you want to be removed, or you can clear all applied filters by clicking Clear All located in the top right-hand corner of the Edit Filter window. When you're finished adding or removing filters, click Done to have those filters applied to the Studies list. Any filters that have been applied to the Studies list will now appear directly to the right of the search bar. You can remove any filter without opening the Filter Edit window by clicking on the X located to the right-hand side of the applied filter. You can sort and view the studies in the Studies list in different ways by applying groupings. The studies list can be grouped by any of the column headers. By default, ARC applies an admission and patient grouping. Unless you manually remove these groupings, they will be there. To manually remove a grouping, you can right-click on the grouping header and select Ungroup, or you can left-click on the grouping header and drag and drop it into the column header area where you want that column to be. You will now view the studies list without any groupings applied. To apply a grouping, you can right-click on any of the column headers and choose Group by this column. Or you can just left-click on the column header you want to group by and drag and drop that header just below the search bar. Groupings can be sorted in ascending or descending order by left-clicking on an applied grouping located below the search bar. You can also right-click on an applied grouping and choose to sort ascending or descending. In addition, by right-clicking on an applied grouping, you can choose to fully collapse the grouped studies, only showing the study header for each of the studies in the list. To open one of the study headers to show the associated files, left-click the arrow located next to the patient you want to see the recorded files for. You can click the arrow a second time to collapse the study header again. By right-clicking on an applied grouping, you can choose to fully expand, which will expand the grouped studies in the study list, showing the study header and the associated files. You can also choose Ungroup, which will remove the applied grouping. You can also choose Select Columns, which opens the column chooser window, allowing you to choose which column headers are displayed in the studies list. The column chooser window functionality was reviewed earlier in this tutorial. You can also choose Best Fit or Best Fit for All columns to adjust the width of the column to the best width to display the data in the column or columns. Lastly, you can choose to add a filter. Groupings and filters can be applied independently of each other or at the same time. You can apply as many groupings or filters as desired. Instead of manually grouping and filtering, you can use the calendar to see studies that were performed on a specific date or in a range of dates. The calendar is located near the top of the window on the left-hand side. Left-click on a date in the calendar, and the studies that were recorded on or that include that date will be displayed in the studies list. Note that using the calendar automatically applies an admission and patient grouping as well as a date filter. If you choose a different date on the calendar, the date filter will update to that date. If you'd like to see a range of dates, left-click and drag across multiple dates, and the date filter is updated to a date range, matching the dates you selected. In the study header line, you will see the patient's name, as well as the date range of their recording, which is labeled as admission. Below the study header line will be each file associated with that recording. To open a file of a recording, you can double-click on that file, or you can click once to select it, and then left-click on the folder icon located at the bottom of the page to open the selected study. When using the calendar to see studies recorded on a specific date or range of dates, in addition to the study header and associated files being displayed in the studies list, a patient list will be populated just below the calendar. The patient list is a simplified list of the patients displayed in the studies list. The patient list will include just the patient's name and the date range of that EEG recording. You will not see any associated files or additional information in this list. You can click on any of the patient names in the patient list. In the studies list, you will now see just that patient's EEG recordings that occur on or contain the dates selected on the calendar. When you click on a patient name in the patient list, it adds an additional filter with that patient's name. If you would like to return to the full list of patients, you can simply click on the X located on the right-hand side of the patient name filter that was added. This will remove that filter, and now the full list of patients located in the patients list is also located in the studies list. If you would like to view multiple months of EEG recordings in the studies list, you can manually add a recording date filter and select the dates that you would like to view between, or you can go over between the calendar and the studies list, locate that horizontal arrow, left click and drag right to view multiple months at one time. You can then left click and drag across the multiple months in the calendar, and the recording date filter will update between those dates. You can then left click and drag the studies list back to the left to have a better view of all of the studies in that list. At any time within the Studies tab in ARC, you can access additional functionality by right-clicking on any of the associated files. The additional functionality that you can access is Start New Recording using this patient information, Resume Recording of this study. That functionality is available when that file is the last one recorded. You can also access or edit study information. You can change the record status, copy audit log, view audit log, save system information, archive selected studies, export selected studies with viewer, and lastly, you could import a study. This additional functionality can also be accessed by selecting any associated file and then clicking on the tool icon at the bottom, which gives you access to the additional functionality. If an EEG record has any associated documents, those can be accessed by selecting the associated file and going over to the Associated Documents tab on the right-hand side. You can open any associated documents by double-clicking on that document. You can change the displayed records by clicking the display button here and choosing My Records, which will display all records that the logged-in user is associated with, or All Records, which will display all records that the logged-in user has permission to view. By default, if there are more than 500 records to display in the studies list, ARC displays the first 500 records. If we remove this recording date filter, there will be more than 500 records to display. There's an indicator down in the bottom left-hand corner that it's only displaying the first 500 records. If you perform any searching or filtering of the studies list, it will still filter the whole database, not just the 500 records displayed in the list. If you prefer that the list has the full database, you can simply click here, and all of the database will be displayed in the studies list.